The morning sun shone brightly over the quiet streets of Westview as a sleek black Tesla pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, adjusting his simple blue polo shirt and taking a deep breath. After 5 years away building a successful tech company in Silicon Valley, he was finally home. But this wasn't the neighborhood he remembered. Their once vibrant streets now looked tired, with several shops boarded up and graffiti covering walls that used to display colorful murals. As he walked down the familiar sidewalk, memories flooded back, playing basketball at the community center, attending after-school programs, and the mentors who had shaped his future. He stopped in front of the old community center, his heart sinking at the sight. The building that had been his second home was now surrounded by a rusty chain-link fence. A faded for sale sign hung crookedly on the door, and weeds pushed through cracks in the parking lot where kids used to play. "Can't believe they're closing it down," came a voice from behind him. He turned to see Mrs. Johnson, his former neighbor, carrying grocery bags. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "Is that really you? Look at you now. We'd heard you made it big out there." They chatted for a while, and she explained how the center had lost funding 3 years ago. "Kids have nowhere to go after school now. No homework help, no sports programs. Such a shame," she sighed. That conversation sparked something in him. By evening, he was on the phone with old friends, community leaders, and local business owners. "We can't let this happen," he told them. "This center saved so many of us. It's time to give back." Within a week, he had organized a massive charity drive. The owner of Westview Shopping Plaza, remembering him as the quiet kid who used to help carry groceries for elderly customers, immediately gave permission to use the parking lot. "Whatever you need," the owner said, handing over the written authorization. The morning of the event, he arrived early to set up. Volunteers from the neighborhood helped arrange folding tables, creating stations for different donations. One table displayed signs for monetary contributions to the Save Our Center Fund. Another collected gently used clothing and school supplies. A third offered hot meals for anyone in need, no questions asked. Local restaurants had donated food, and several tech companies he'd contacted provided computers for a future learning lab. By 10 a.m., the parking lot was buzzing with activity. Families dropped off donations, elderly residents shared stories about the center's glory days, and children played games organized by teenage volunteers. He moved between tables, thanking volunteers and updating his social media followers about the event's progress. His company had pledged to match every dollar raised, and the online donation counter was climbing steadily. "This is what community looks like," he said to a volunteer, watching a group of teenagers help an elderly man carry donated furniture to the collection area. Everyone coming together, helping each other. A local news van pulled up, and a reporter approached him for an interview. "What inspired you to organize this?" she asked. "This community raised me," he replied, gesturing to the busy scene around them. "When I was struggling in school, the center's tutors helped me catch up. When I needed guidance, the mentors here showed me possibilities I never imagined. Now it's my turn to ensure the next generation has those same opportunities." As the interview wrapped up, more cars pulled into the lot. Word had spread on social media, and people from neighboring towns were arriving with donations. The event was exceeding all expectations, and hope was returning to Westview. Little did he know that in just a few minutes, this peaceful gathering would face an unexpected challenge that would test the community's resilience and ultimately lead to changes far beyond saving a single building. The charity event was in full swing when 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. The sound of laughter and conversation gradually quieted as people noticed the officers stepping out of their vehicles. The community organizer, busy helping an elderly woman with her donation, looked up to see 2 officers walking directly toward him with stern expressions. The taller officer, badge number 4521, approached first. His hand rested on his belt as he scanned the crowd with narrowed eyes. His partner, a shorter man with a thick mustache, followed closely behind. Neither officer smiled or offered a greeting. "What's going on here?" The tall officer demanded, his voice carrying across the now silent parking lot. "You got a permit for this gathering?" The organizer maintained his composure, wiping his hands on his jeans before responding. "Good afternoon, officers. Yes, I have all the necessary paperwork right here." He reached for a folder on the nearest table containing the written permission from the plaza owner and notification letters sent to the city. "This looks like an unauthorized assembly to me," the mustached officer interrupted before even glancing at the documents. "We received complaints about noise and traffic congestion." Several community members began to gather around, confusion and concern evident on their faces. Mrs. Johnson stepped forward. "Officers, this young man has permission. He's helping our community. We're raising money to save the community center." The tall officer ignored her completely, keeping his eyes fixed on the organizer. "I asked you a question. Where's your permit?" "Right here, sir," the organizer replied calmly, holding out the folder. "I have written authorization from the plaza owner, and we notified the city about this event last week." The officer snatched the folder but barely glanced at its contents. "This doesn't look official to me. You need to shut this down immediately." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the growing crowd. The organizer remained patient. "Officer, if you look at the second page, you'll see the plaza owner's signature and contact information. You can call him to verify." "Don't tell me how to do my job," the tall officer snapped, tossing the folder back onto the table. "I'm giving you 10 minutes to clear this area, or we'll start making arrests for unlawful assembly." A teenage volunteer recording the interaction on her phone spoke up. "But officer, we're just trying to help our neighborhood. We're not causing any trouble." The mustached officer pointed at her aggressively. "Put that phone away before I confiscate it." The situation was escalating quickly. Parents pulled their children closer, and elderly residents looked on with worry. The organizer raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "Officers, please, we're not looking for any trouble. This is a peaceful charity event. We have children and seniors here." "I don't care what you claim this is," the tall officer retorted. "In my experience, these kinds of gatherings always lead to problems." His tone carried an unmistakable edge of prejudice. The crowd's discomfort grew as the officers continued to dismiss every explanation. Several people began recording the encounter on their phones, despite the officers' warnings. The organizer noticed the tension building and tried once more to defuse the situation. "Perhaps we can call the plaza owner together. He can confirm everything I'm telling you," he suggested. The tall officer stepped closer, invading the organizer's personal space. "Are you refusing to comply with a direct order?" Before the organizer could respond, an elderly veteran in the crowd called out, "Leave him alone. He's done more for this community in one day than you have in years." The officers' faces hardened. The mustached one reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we need backup at Westview Plaza." Multiple individuals refusing to disperse. The organizer's heart sank. What had started as a beautiful day of community unity was quickly turning into something that could harm the very people he was trying to help. He looked around at the worried faces, mothers clutching their children, elderly folks who had come to support the cause, teenagers who had volunteered their Saturday to help others. This wasn't how the day was supposed to unfold. Within minutes, 2 more police cars arrived, sirens briefly wailing before falling silent. 4 additional officers emerged, hands on their equipment belts, surveying the scene as if expecting chaos instead of the peaceful gathering they found. The crowd of volunteers and donors had grown larger, forming a protective circle around the organizer and the donation tables. "Everyone needs to step back," the tall officer commanded, his voice now carrying an edge of frustration. He turned to the organizer. "Last chance. Pack up now or you're coming with us." The organizer pulled out his phone, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm going to live stream this interaction," he announced calmly. "For everyone's safety and transparency." He pressed the button, and within seconds, hundreds of viewers tuned in from across the city. "Put that phone down," the mustached officer shouted, reaching forward. "I have the right to record in a public space," the organizer replied, taking a step back while keeping the camera steady. The phone's screen showed the viewer count climbing rapidly, -500, 800, 1,000, 200 people now watching. One of the newly arrived officers, a woman with sergeant stripes, whispered something to the tall officer, likely noticing the growing online attention, but he seemed beyond caring. "I don't care how many people are watching. You're disturbing the peace." A local pastor stepped forward from the crowd. "Officers, I've known this young man since he was a child. He coordinated with all of us. The church council, the business association, we all support this event. The tall officer's face reddened. Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us, the pastor responded firmly. This is our community. The tension thickened when the mustached officer noticed the organizer's expensive watch and the key fob in his pocket. Nice watch, he sneered. Fancy car too, I bet. How does someone like you afford all that? The implication hung heavy in the air. The crowd murmured with indignation. The organizer kept his composure but felt his patience wearing thin. I'm a business owner. I worked hard for everything I have, and now I'm trying to give back to my community. Business owner? The tall officer scoffed. What kind of business? You better not be lying to me. The live stream comments exploded with outrage. People recognized the organizer, sharing links to articles about his successful tech company. The viewer count surpassed 5,000. A young mother in the crowd spoke up, her voice shaking. He's telling the truth. His company donated computers to our school last month. Why are you treating him like a criminal? The tall officer had heard enough. That's it. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and failure to comply. He reached for his handcuffs. The crowd gasped. Several people shouted no, and this isn't right. Phones were held higher, capturing every angle. The organizer didn't resist, but kept his phone steady, streaming everything. On what grounds? He asked calmly. I've shown you my permits. I've been respectful. This is a peaceful gathering. You can explain it to the judge, the officer growled, grabbing his arm. Just then, a commotion at the edge of the parking lot drew everyone's attention. A black SUV with tinted windows had pulled up, and people were pointing and whispering excitedly. The surgeon's radio crackled with urgent chatter. The organizer's phone continued streaming as the tall officer tightened his grip. The community held its collective breath, witnesses to what felt like a terrible injustice about to unfold. Children clung to their parents, elderly volunteers shook their heads in dismay, and teenagers recorded every second. The viewer count hit 10,000. Comments flooded in. This is wrong. Someone help him. Where's the justice? In that moment, as the handcuffs gleamed in the sunlight and the crowd's protests grew louder, no one could have predicted that help was arriving from the most unexpected source. The black SUV's door opened, and everything was about to change. The black SUV's door swung open, and a woman in a navy blue suit stepped out confidently. Her security detail followed, but she waved them back with a simple gesture. The crowd immediately recognized her. Their state governor, known for her surprise community visits and hands-on approach to leadership. The police officers froze. The tall officer's hand, still gripping the organizer's arm, slowly loosened. The mustached officer's face went pale as he recognized who was walking toward them with purposeful strides. What's happening here? The governor asked, her voice carrying authority but not anger. She looked directly at the officers, then at the organizer, and finally at the crowd of concerned citizens surrounding them. The tall officer stammered, Governor, we received complaints about an unauthorized gathering. This individual refused to disperse when ordered. The governor's eyebrows raised slightly. Is that so? She turned to the organizer, studying his face for a moment before recognition dawned. Wait, I know you. You spoke at the Tech Innovation Summit last month about community investment. You're the young entrepreneur who pledged to rebuild disadvantaged neighborhoods. The organizer nodded, still slightly stunned by this turn of events. Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to save our community center. This is a charity drive. We have all the proper permissions. May I see them? She asked. The organizer handed her the folder the officers had dismissed earlier. She took her time reading each document, occasionally glancing up at the officers who shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. The live stream viewer count exploded to 25,000 as people realized the governor herself had arrived. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. These documents appear to be completely in order, the governor stated firmly. She turned to the officers. Did you review these before threatening to arrest this man? The sergeant stepped forward, sensing the situation spiraling beyond their control. Governor, we were just responding to complaints. What complaints exactly? She interrupted. Because I've been watching this young man's social media. I knew about this event. In fact, I was planning to stop by later today to show my support. The crowd murmured in surprise. The governor continued, I see a peaceful gathering of citizens working to improve their community. I see volunteers feeding the hungry, collecting clothes for those in need, and raising money for a vital community resource. What I don't see is any reason for police intervention. She turned back to the organizer. Please tell me more about your plans for the community center. As he explained his vision, after-school programs, job training, senior activities, the governor listened intently. The police officers stood awkwardly, their earlier aggression replaced by visible discomfort. Officers, the governor finally addressed them. I'd like to see your body camera footage from this incident. Now. The tall officer's face flushed. That would need to go through proper channels. I am the proper channel, she responded coolly. I'm requesting it now, and I expect full cooperation. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Chief, yes, it's me. I need you at Westview Plaza immediately. We have a situation that requires your attention. The crowd began to applaud, some people wiping away tears. The elderly veteran who had spoken up earlier called out, Thank you, Governor. Thank you for listening. The governor smiled at him, then addressed the crowd. This is what democracy looks like, citizens helping citizens, communities coming together. No one should be criminalized for trying to make their neighborhood better. She turned to the organizer once more. I apologize for what you've experienced today. Your work here is exactly what our state needs more of. Please continue your event. I'll stay to help if you'll have me. The organizer, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, could only nod gratefully. The governor rolled up her sleeves, ready to join the volunteers. Meanwhile, the police officers stood silently, knowing their actions would soon face serious scrutiny. The day that had nearly ended in unjust arrest was transforming into something none of them could have imagined, a powerful moment of accountability and community triumph. The police chief arrived within minutes, his expression grim as he stepped out of his vehicle. He was a tall man with graying hair and a reputation for fairness, though some in the community questioned whether that fairness extended equally to everyone. Today would test that reputation. Governor, he greeted with a nod, then surveyed the scene, the nervous officers, the crowd of witnesses, and the young organizer still holding his phone, live streaming to what was now 30,000 viewers. Chief, I want to review the body camera footage from your offices immediately. The governor stated without preamble. And I want to understand why a permitted charity event was treated as a criminal operation. The chief turned to his officers. Hand over your body cameras. The tall officer and his mustached partner reluctantly unclipped their devices. The chief connected the first camera to a tablet and began reviewing the footage with the governor. As they watched, the truth became painfully clear. The footage showed the officers arriving and immediately taking an aggressive stance. It captured the organizer calmly presenting his documents, which the officers barely glanced at before dismissing. Most tellingly, it recorded their comments about the organizer's watch and questioning how someone like him could afford nice things. The governor's expression hardened with each passing minute. The crowd watched in tense silence as she and the chief reviewed the evidence. When they finished with the first camera, they moved to the second, which revealed similar behavior. There were no complaints, were there? The governor asked quietly. The chief checked his phone, scrolling through dispatch records. His shoulders slumped. No, Governor. No calls came in about this event. The tall officer attempted to interject. We were just being proactive. Proactive? The governor interrupted. I see profiling. I see assumptions. I see two officers who didn't even read the permits they were shown. She turned to the crowd, many still recording. I want everyone here to know that this behavior does not represent our values or our standards for law enforcement. The chief stepped forward. Officers, surrendered your badges and weapons. You're suspended pending a full investigation. The two officers looked shocked but complied, their earlier bravado completely deflated. The governor addressed the organizer directly. I owe you a personal apology. What you experienced today was wrong, and I promise you it will be addressed. She turned to the crowd. All of you deserve better from those sworn to protect and serve. An elderly woman in the crowd called out, This isn't the first time, Governor. They always treat us like criminals in this neighborhood. The governor nodded solemnly. I hear you, and that changes today. Chief, I want a complete review of all interactions between your department and this community over the past year, and I want community members involved in that review. The organizer finally lowered his phone, ending the live stream that had captured everything. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the emotional weight of what had just transpired. The governor noticed and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Your composure throughout this ordeal was remarkable, she told him. Lesser people might have reacted differently, potentially escalating the situation. You showed true leadership. The chief approached the organizer. I'm deeply sorry for what my officers put you through. This isn't who we are, or at least it's not who we should be. The crowd began to applaud, not in celebration, but in acknowledgement of a moment that felt historic. Parents hugged their children tighter, explaining that sometimes standing up for what's right leads to change. The teenagers who had been recording everything looked at each other with newfound understanding of their power as witnesses. The governor wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone again and made another call. I need the Attorney General's office here. We're implementing immediate changes to police training and accountability measures. As word spread beyond the parking lot, news vans began arriving. What had started as a local charity event was becoming a statewide conversation about justice, accountability, and the power of community. The truth hadn't just been revealed, it was demanding action, and for once, those in power were listening. As the news crews set up their cameras, the parking lot transformed into something between a community celebration and a historic moment of change. The governor refused to leave, rolling up her sleeves and joining the volunteers at the donation tables. She helped sort clothes, served food to families, and listened to residents share their stories about the community center. This place saved my life, one teenager told her while folding donated shirts. When my mom worked double shifts, I came here after school. The tutors helped me graduate. The governor nodded, making notes on her phone. We're not just saving this center. We're going to expand programs like this across the state. Meanwhile, the police chief called an emergency meeting with all available officers. They gathered in a circle as he addressed them directly. What happened today is a wake-up call. We've lost the trust of the people we serve, and we're going to earn it back. The organizer, still processing everything that had happened, found himself surrounded by reporters. But before they could ask questions, the governor stepped in. Let's give him some space. He's been through enough today. She then addressed the media herself, praising the organizer's vision and condemning the officer's actions without mincing words. As the afternoon progressed, something beautiful began to happen. People who had initially come just to drop off donations decided to stay and help. Local business owners arrived with additional contributions. One restaurant owner brought enough food to feed everyone present, while a hardware store owner pledged materials for the community center renovation. The chief returned to the scene with a dozen officers, but this time they came to help. They removed their utility belts, rolled up their sleeves, and joined the community in sorting donations and serving food. Some residents were hesitant at first, but the chief's genuine remorse and the officers' willingness to work alongside them began to bridge the gap. This is how it should be, an elderly man commented, watching officers play basketball with neighborhood kids. Police and people working together. The governor pulled the organizer aside. I want you to lead a task force on community police relations. Your experience today, combined with your business background, makes you uniquely qualified. He hesitated. I'm not sure I'm the right person. You are exactly the right person, she insisted. You stayed calm under pressure. You showed leadership. You brought people together. That's what we need. By evening, the charity event had raised triple its original goal. The live stream had been shared thousands of times, sparking conversations about police reform across social media. The suspended officers' conduct was being investigated not just by their department, but by a state-level commission. The chief announced mandatory retraining for all officers, focusing on implicit bias, de-escalation, and community engagement. Starting next week, every officer will spend 1 day a month volunteering in the neighborhoods they patrol, he declared. We need to know the people we serve. As the sun began to set, the governor gathered everyone for an announcement. Today, we witnessed both the worst and the best of our community. We saw prejudice, but we also saw people standing up against it. We saw abuse of power, but we also saw accountability. This young man's vision for a better community doesn't end with saving one building. It begins there. She turned to the organizer. I'm allocating emergency funds to not only save this community center but to expand it, and I want you to oversee the project. The crowd erupted in cheers. Parents hugged their children, volunteers high-fived each other, and even some officers wiped away tears. What had started as a potential tragedy had become a triumph of community spirit. The organizer looked around at the faces of his neighbors, people he'd known since childhood, teenagers he hoped to inspire, elders who had paved the way. This was no longer just about saving a building. It was about rebuilding trust, creating opportunity, and showing that change was possible when people stood together. 6 months later, the old community center was unrecognizable. Fresh paint gleamed on the walls, new windows sparkled in the sunlight, and children's laughter echoed from the renovated playground. A large sign above the entrance read, "Hope Community Center, where dreams take flight." The grand reopening ceremony drew hundreds of people, including the governor, who had kept her promise to support the project every step of the way. Local news stations covered the event, calling it a model for community transformation across the state. Inside, the center buzzed with activity. The computer lab, donated by the organizer's tech company, hummed with students learning coding. The art room displayed colorful murals painted by local teenagers. In the gymnasium, senior citizens practiced Tai Chi while kids waited for basketball practice to begin. None of this would have happened without that day, the organizer told the crowd during his speech. What started as an attempt to save one building became a movement to transform our entire community. The governor stepped forward to share major news. Today, I'm signing an executive order creating community oversight boards for every police department in our state. These boards will include residents, business owners, and youth representatives. The crowd applauded as she continued. The 2 officers involved in the incident 6 months ago have been permanently removed from the force. But more importantly, our police academy has completely revised its training program. Every new officer now spends 3 months working directly with community organizations before they ever put on a badge. The police chief, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. His department had undergone remarkable changes. Officers now attended monthly community dinners, participated in youth mentoring programs, and walked neighborhood beats instead of just patrolling in cars. Crime rates had dropped, but more significantly, trust between police and residents had grown. The organizer's role had evolved too. As head of the state's Community Relations Task Force, he had helped develop new policies that were being adopted nationwide. His tech company had created an app connecting residents directly with local services and providing transparent police accountability metrics. "I never imagined that terrible day would lead to all this," he reflected to a reporter. But sometimes it takes a crisis to create change. The community center's success sparked similar projects across the state. Abandoned buildings were being transformed into youth centers, job training facilities, and senior care spaces. The governor's office reported that private donations to community projects had increased by 300% since the incident. At the ceremony's conclusion, a surprise announcement moved everyone to tears. The city council had voted unanimously to rename the street in front of the center Justice Avenue, a permanent reminder of how a community stood together against injustice and created lasting change. As the celebration continued into the evening, the organizer watched families enjoying the facilities. Children played in the new computer lab, teenagers practiced dance routines in the studio, and seniors shared stories in the comfortable lounge area. This was exactly what he had envisioned that morning 6 months ago when he first saw the for sale sign. The governor found him in a quiet moment. "You know, that day could have ended very differently," she said softly. "Your dignity and composure changed everything." He smiled. "It wasn't just me. It was everyone who stood up, everyone who refused to accept injustice as normal. Change happens when communities unite." As the sun set on Justice Avenue, the center's lights illuminated the neighborhood. Inside, a new generation was learning, growing, and dreaming. Outside, officers walked their beats, stopping to chat with residents they now knew by name. The story that began with an act of prejudice had become a testament to resilience, accountability, and the power of community. It proved that when good people stand together, when leaders listen, and when systems change, Justice doesn't just prevail, it transforms everything it touches. And in Westview, where a community center once faced demolition, hope had found a permanent home.